Let's start it again, actually. This is Inside of Outsiders. I'm Jeremy Asgari, and today's guest is Fabien Desgroux, a non-traditional storyteller and a longtime friend. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Absolutely.
It's funny, we both come from the school of New York City nightlife. I call it the school of New York City nightlife because I learned so much in the grind, which allowed me to do everything I do now is based on what I learned through there. You're also from Paris. Mm-hmm. I'm born there. I'm not from there. I'm from here. But there's that connection. But most of all, the reason why I feel connected to you the most, I'm not sure if we've ever spoken about this, is because we were in nightlife, and I feel like we were attempting other businesses together at the same time to make our way out of it. And you see someone trying to do the hustle that you're doing, and it's like this common bond you have. And when I was doing Hangry Garden and you were doing Crêpes Sucrées, like it was, I just saw the hustle and I saw where you were at, and I felt it because I was feeling the same way. And I think we developed a mutual respect through that.
True. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, respect and just that consistency, which you're usually looking for in people. Yeah. Friends or family, but mostly friends. And you have that thing as well, like loyalty. And I know that's something I thought about right before coming, that we've known each other probably 15, 16 years now. Yeah. And even though we don't speak that often, when we do, it's always a great time. And when you show up to Paris or when I come back to New York, but there was that, shared hustle, which is something we definitely learn in New York nightlife, New York in general, but nightlife was a huge part of it. And we all try one way or another to transition out of it. I mean, we've seen many of them. Yeah, I mean, with better success or not, it all depends on people. I think for me, seeing the generic transition of a lot of them, and no offense, there's nothing wrong with this, but becoming real estate agents ate at my soul. And I didn't want to fall into losing my ability to be creative. And not to say you can't be creative in that. And again, I want to reiterate, because I feel like I'm bashing anyone who goes into that. I'm not. But for me, it wasn't my path. I wanted to be able to do something that was innovative and different, and still also creative. And I remember trying so many different businesses and elements to do that, and a lot of failed attempts. And yeah, well, you live and learn. Huh? Absolutely. And those were all necessary for sure. Yeah. I'd like to know we're going to get into your whole story, right? So we'll start from where you're originally from, and Paris. Yeah, of course. Paris, France, born and raised. I was there until like 23 and eventually moved to New York. Yeah, it was between 23, 24. Stayed for about 15 years, which we shared a bunch of good stories in these 15 years. As cliche as it seemed, I really moved to New York with no visa, no story whatsoever, no money, and tried to make it happen like many other immigrants. Yeah. And eventually, a guy which I'm sure you remember was the very first one to give me a shot was John Gable. Really? Yeah, Gable Entertainment. Gable gave you your first shot? Yeah. Because I remember, from what I remember of your brand, nightlife brand, it was usually elevated, right? More on the luxury side. And if I think of John Gable, I think more of the mainstream general masses. Well, pretty quickly I understood how John operated. Yeah. And by the way, no disrespect to him, I think he was doing a great job at what he was doing, specifically all the New Year's Eve parties. He was extremely good at it. His business model was working very well. On the weekly basis of nightclub, I pretty quickly transitioned into having my own brand, which is called, the very first one called Clientele Group, and still working under the company that John had, of course, pretty much, but the brand was mine, and this was my way to eventually separate from him, and people thought I was working on my own. Mm-hmm. These were the first 2 years, and eventually I created what's still the company, PUR, Pure Entertainment, which I've done 15 years of nightlife with it, and a bunch of different events, from the weekly club party, which we're very familiar with. Yes. And some more punctual thing. And there were also the indoor pool parties and the I remember brunch parties and the, I think about those weekly club parties. I remember moments in my life where I loved them. It was because my community was there. We gathered together because that was what everyone wanted to do. Yeah. And when
it no longer was the place where people wanted to gather anymore. It was eating my soul, like having to be in the nightclub when I personally didn't want to be there and having to convince people to be there. Oh, that
been there, done that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Just like you, I think the reason why I was able to last so long was also because I really tried to surround myself with people I actually truly appreciate the company, and it was mutual.
Yeah.
And I think you can say the same today. Looking back years after, I've put together so many people, whether like best friends, even initiating weddings. People get married by meeting through my parties and my events. And as an immigrant specifically, because you move to New York without friends and family and you're a little bit on your own, you tend to recreate pretty quickly a core group of close people. And this was the same for a lot of the people that were around my group as well, which whether they were French, Italian, Mexican, Brazilian, a lot of Latin, but also Scandinavian and American. And for those people, you eventually create that group, which becomes your kind of New York family.
Chosen family.
And you definitely want to hang out with them as much as possible.
Yeah.
And this is when our parties become the playground for them to get together. And as you grow within the industry, you start doing those dinners and the brunch and also some weekends sometimes. And that provide a even better platform and outlet for them to hang out together rather than just nightclub.
Right.
But truthfully, when you're 25, I mean, a nightclub is just fine.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah. But I think you're the one that's facilitating the social environment for them, right? So you're playing a huge role. The tricky part is you're not tricky. It can be viewed as tricky, is that you're getting paid to do so.
True.
But then again, if they understood the work that went behind it, then they would understand that you're getting underpaid, right?
Yeah, I mean, and this remain a win-win regardless, because these people get to go to the best clubs.
Agreed.
If you're in working with the best clubs, they get in for free. They don't get to spend much money. I mean, you know the drill. You know the
of course.
ins and out. On top of it, if you get to organize dinners before, they get
free food,
free dinners in some of the best restaurants. And there's also something I tried to do, was always working with brand that would treat me as a client rather than treating me as a promoter. Therefore, my own friends or clients would get the same type of experience as if they were paying for it. And that makes a huge difference from just being a filler in either a restaurant or a club or bar and being treated just like anybody else.
Yeah.
And so they were gaining something out of it.
Oh, for sure.
The friendships and the company and the fun. They were obviously also, let's be realistic, also for youngsters just getting started in New York, they were saving money.
Yeah, 100%.
So I don't think they mind you making a little buck on it.
Listen, anyone who's reasonable appreciates it.
Yeah.
But let's go back a little bit. You obviously, I don't think this is what you had in mind as a kid. What was growing up in Paris like, and what did you see your life being when you were a kid?
So I grew up with a family where both my parents were entrepreneurs. So my dad was an architect, my mom was a landscape architect, and both had their own companies. So we definitely grew up watching our parents going to work pretty early, coming back pretty late. So I definitely wanted myself, I think, be one of those, knowing what it means to work and art, working income, if you will. Both my parents were very social, so it wouldn't be surprising that a few years later I ended up putting parties together myself.
Yeah. In Paris first. You started in Paris.
I kind of did, yeah. At the age of 17 and 18, I was already putting parties together at least once a month. During college, I was working also as a bartender and helping out. So I was always within that industry kind of, even though this was not the job I had eventually after college. But having, parents pretty social, having people over pretty often. It definitely, I guess, put me on the path to knowing what it means to get people together and make it a party and an event. Growing up, I was doing a lot of sports, mostly tennis and soccer. Even went to school, like call that tennis études. Like sports school where I would literally go to class from 8 to 1 and then eventually play tennis in the afternoon at a pretty good level until I got tired of that old tennis world, which was very focused on one kid and the family. And I mean, it didn't work for me as well as the collective, the team sports, such as soccer, was a better fit for me, I guess. And eventually went to college for communication and advertising. I wanted to work as a copywriter, which I ended up doing. I worked for a pretty large company called DDB. It's part of the Omnicom group for about a year after college.
In Paris, of course.
In Paris, in the headquarters over there. Seemed fun at first, and eventually I just realized that advertising was nothing close to the golden age of the 80s and the 90s. And I decided to resign and went on to work a summer in Saint-Tropez in one of those fancy party beach, which was the pioneer of the daytime party, even 20 years before Bagatelle even opened.
Really?
Yeah. It was called La Voile Rouge.
And what was your job there?
Waitering, rich clients, and having fun, spraying champagne. And I mean, that won't surprise you, right?
Yeah.
But I did a summer like that. And eventually, just a few months after, a friend of mine, closest friend, very close friend of mine, was going to New York for an internship for 6 months. It was the end of the summer and told me, Fabien, by the way, I'm going there for 6 months. If you don't have nothing to do, just come and visit. And by the time September arrived, I'm like, talked to my parents. I'm like, you know what? I resigned a few months ago. I just spent the summer, made money. Why not giving it a shot and going to New York?
Yeah.
I'd been there just once for a vacation about a year earlier with my best friend from college. Absolutely fell in love with the city. So I told myself, that's a good occasion to go back. I think it was late of 2004. And was supposed to stay for 2 months. And you know what it is. I stayed for a little longer and eventually made it back full-time permanently in February of 2006.
So what did you do in the meantime before February 2006? You were in New York. You were just...
I did some restaurant work.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people. I suppose if I'm supposed to say it, but not necessarily had a visa just yet.
Right. I mean, it's not uncommon. But
it's not uncommon. Work. And actually, I started working going back to when I told you John Gable was the first one that gave me a shot. The very first one that gave me a shot was Etienne Deyance.
Yeah.
You remember him?
Etienne was...
He was doing those tapis rouge party.
Is he the Haitian guy?
He's, I don't know if he's Asian. I think he has some African origin, and his brother was the pirate.
Yes.
You remember?
Jean-Claude.
Jean-Claude.
Yeah.
But back then, I think Etienne was running the operation, the promotion at Lotus.
Was he?
204, on Tuesdays.
In 2004?
Tuesdays.
Oh, Tuesdays, okay.
And this was the very first time that I set a foot in a New York nightclub as a promoter. And eventually I worked, I think, under his name for about 3 months. And when I came back in 2006, that's when eventually John Gable hired me and did the visa for me, which was a big deal.
He did?
Yeah, he did.
So Lotus was the first place I did a weekday party. I did Wednesdays with Bill Spector underneath Smack Entertainment. So that place was special.
Fun fact, I saw Bill in Paris 2 months ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Bill was one of the guys that gave me the start in the mainstream parties. I first started doing like some stuff with a friend of mine that was like some backpacker hip hop sounds. Plus it was like two levels. So it was like backpacker hip hop, and downstairs was like this backpacker house music with congas and all that. So that was the scene. Then it went into more of like the Latin / hip hop scene. And it wasn't until I got an internship at Crowbar that I met Bill. And
so before it became Pink. Right?
Way before. Right? This is like before they even opened up. So there was 6 months before Crowbar opened up. I was in the marketing intern. And that's where I met everybody who was anybody in nightlife. And I liked the guys from Smack. They were doing like cool hip hop parties. They were dressing like the way I would dress, and they were going to clubs that way. And I was like, this is who I want to hang out with. And that's how I got started in that scene.
Yeah, well, I actually listening to hip hop back in Paris, but the scene over there was already a lot of house music. And I actually remember in 2006 when I started in clubs, even like Kane or Pink Elephant after, this was a huge deal, having a house music club. Pink Elephant was probably the very first one, even before the 27th Street location, to do it.
As a small club, because it used to be big, like Sound Factory. Those were all house, but
And I remember coming to New York and working at PM and thinking, wow, this is so cool to be able to go in a club where they play super cool hip hop.
I met you at PM first with Vincent Magnum. I think he introduced us.
Yeah. He's still DJing in Paris, as a matter of fact.
I know he is. I see him every time. If he's in town, I didn't see him last time because he was DJing in Monaco for the Grand Prix. But yeah.
That was actually great for me as a Parisian and a French to be able to go in a club, but a kind of a fancy elite type of club where they would play hip hop rather than it was more of a street thing back in Paris, and clubs were much about the house scene. So that was a good thing, and eventually then came to be working with, like I said, Pink Elephant and Kane with Jamie and Jama, which was an amazing time.
I did the Tuesdays with D-Nice there.
I think I was working Friday night.
Yeah.
But, I mean, these were the years of 27th Street, right?
Yeah, exactly. When you're doing this, what was your view of nightlife? Was it for you, this is a career, or was it, this is a good stepping stone? What was your view?
This is a good stepping stone, but I would lie if I was not admitting that probably at age 24, 25, I told myself, well, it might be just a step, but who knows if I can take it further. Also because a lot of people within that industry would work or would start as a promoter and eventually transition into either a club owner or an operator or... I think coming from the advertising world, and since I'd made a lot of events before, I told myself, let's create an extensive network of people and probably do more events if possible. And then, I mean, I'll be honest, I eventually get absorbed sucked in by the industry and the easy money. And once you
quick money, I wouldn't call it easy. It's not easy.
True.
It's quick money.
Quick money. It's called quick money. You're right. It's quick money. But once you start doing well, it's, you get sucked in because it's fun. You're in New York City.
And especially at that age, because your friends the same age haven't climbed the corporate ladder high enough to make as much money as you're making in nightlife.
True.
So.
Yeah, they're just getting started, and you're definitely making very good amount of money.
Yeah.
You between 25 and 30, which is for a lot of people, including myself, this is the first time you start making this much money. You're able to get yourself a place, buy stuff, do good vacation, and looking back at 42, now I'm like, okay, well, I don't regret it, but you live and learn, and now, you know what to buy, when to buy, you know where to go for the right amount of money, not to spend your money unnecessarily. But back then, you do it. It's fun. And I absolutely do not regret it. But to your question, I think that was a step to something that would hopefully transition to more luxury events. At least that was the plan back then. And as my brand was growing, as Fabien, the French promoter, I suppose, I stuck around. I mean, I started enjoying it. But eventually around like 31, 32, so about 7 or 8 years within that industry of doing it, I really started looking at options, how I could transition out of nightlife. Eventually had an opportunity to be a partner in a wine bar. Kind of thing fell apart, but I was definitely looking at transitioning out of it and making the best of that network I'd built. And eventually, as you know, a few years later, I ended up opening Crêpe Sucre and the French Block. Crêpe Sucre, which was just a crepe bar within that food market, the Gazon market. And when the food court was relocated I eventually took over the spot for the coffee, which eventually ended up being a own store. Might talk about it after, but I think there was definitely after 7 or 8 years, there was definitely a plan to take it somewhere else rather than just sticking around. But the truth is, until I left New York 2019, I mean, I still go back and forth and I spend a lot of time in New York, but I think until 2019 I was still doing a lot of it, at least twice a week.
And it took you leaving to kind of get that separation?
Absolutely.
Or perspective? And why did you leave initially as well?
So by the mid 2017, I was back then still doing 3 parties a week, which was Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. I was a partner in a concierge service with Laurent Bad and Marc Bao. Which had started that company. I jumped on board and we're doing concierge services, which they still do. The company's doing well. And I had the crepe coffee shop, which I had just moved to an actual location, which was within the San Remo.
I remember.
Space.
Beautiful location in regards
Beautiful location on paper. I took the front shop of the speakeasy, but I didn't do my due diligences, and I paid the price for it because I rushed into taking that space. Also back then, I don't know why I forgot this name. He offered me the opportunity, and I trusted him. He was one of the GM also at one hotel with the ponytail. He was dating Ruby. Do you remember him?
I don't remember. No.
Great guy. I mean, we got along very well. He was involved, and he said, I know you're looking for a space. Why don't you take the space? And I said, yeah, sure. Actually, that's a good space. I remember back then used to be, do you remember Bobby from Pink?
Yes.
He was a contractor.
Yeah.
He was doing all my renovation and thing. We renovated the space in 2 weeks, and I reopened during Fashion Week. Super happy finally getting that real French coffee shop / bar because I could benefit from the full liquor license of the speakeasy as well. So it was a coffee shop, you had food, and you could transition into bar at night. It was really getting started very well. And without really me knowing, they stopped paying the rent for some time, and eventually the landlord evicted them from the space. I was just subletting. I was not renting. So I was guilty by association. I tried to reach out to that landlord. But long story short, I got to vacate the premises in the span of 48 hours, put 5 people to unemployment, which had become my friend. And even though that one venture was not generating as much money, it was probably the one at that specific time that was making me the happiest. Because nightlife, it had been 13 years. The concierge service were only for 2 years, but I mean, Mark and Laurent wouldn't be surprised me saying it, but I was not so much into it. I didn't have that drive to spend time with those rich guys and just delivering any service. It's not so much what I do. So when they took it away from me, the bar, it definitely took something really away from me as far as me loving New York, being happy in New York, and finding that balance. And at the time, to be honest with you, nothing surprising for New York people, but I was working close to 22 hours a day. Like I would wake up at 6:15 in the morning, get to the spot at 7:30. Then at 1, I would go to the concierge service office until 7 or 8, then come back home, shower, and then go to a dinner at 10, and eventually clubs until 4, go to bed at 4:30, and wake up again at 6:30. And disclaimer, I'm not doing drugs on top of it. I was not a drug user, even though I was a nightlife person. So when they took it away from me, I'm like, you know what? Actually, that whole balance and the way I was doing things is not working for me anymore. So I'm going to take 2 years. I'm sorry. I'm going to take 2 months, correction, some sabbatical 2 months and start traveling a little longer. Because you know so well in nightlife, we used to take some time off, sometimes like 2 or 3 days, 5 days, 6 days, but you would never take like 3 weeks, 4 weeks. You would never go away.
Only time I would take away 2-3 weeks would be January, right after New Year's.
Yeah, fair enough. There was January and there was a little bit of August maybe for European like us specifically. But it was kind of unusual. And I remember myself in the summer when I would take potentially 11 days, 12 days, I would always be on my phone and thinking you have to get back to New York because you have to be back. You have to be back. The phone was like nonstop, and my family knew me since 2006. I moved to New York and I started that job. I would always be on my phone. But anyway, going back to what I was telling you, when that happened, I said, you know what? Let me actually try to take longer trips, going back home for a longer period of time. Needless to mention, side note, I'd lost my dad in 2016, so I think it definitely played a part, and consciously maybe wanted to take a break and take things off my mind for a bit. So I went to places I'd been wanting to go. I went to Iceland, I went to Japan. I did work for a charity as well for kids at the Bellevue Hospital. Mm-hmm. And 2 months became 2 years. Long story short, I kind of never stopped. I would go back to New York every 10 days or so, do a party. I would pay for the rent. Yeah. And I would make it work with, my savings and just travel. And I loved it so much that I think it served as an introspection, and it made me look, at least took some distance with the city itself, and understanding that I was not so addicted to the city anymore. Right. At that age, 37, 38, obviously my priorities had shifted. And a year prior to me shutting down the cafe, I probably was still thinking that I would spend at least 10 or 15 years in New York. And I had the coffee shop, the concierge service, I was still doing nightlife, I had offers and options to do other things. And eventually when they took it away from me, I do believe, looking back now, it was definitely a blessing in disguise because he helped me tremendously. Like,
yeah. And you went to Paris from there? You moved?
Yeah, I ended up, I moved back in November 2019.
Good timing.
Right? When I usually tell people I moved back 3 years ago, it's like, oh yeah, I moved back because of COVID. I'm like, no, I actually moved back 2 months before COVID. It was a well-thought decision. It just happened to be a pretty good coincidence because looking back, working nightlife, if I'd been still in New York, paying that like $4,500 rent, and having an industry that was a total stop for about a year and a half. Yeah, I don't know how I would have made it financially speaking.
I agree. I mean, that's part of the reason. I never want to say COVID was a blessing. A lot of people lost their lives. I use it to my advantage to build outsiders. And when I spent so much time away from nightlife because of COVID, the thought of going back to doing weekly parties made me physically ill. I couldn't do it. So I decided not to and work on outsiders to grow it.
Yeah, and probably blessing these guys that COVID because you didn't have any other option. I mean, you had to, kind of, right?
Yeah, so. and more than that, I was afraid that I couldn't live without the nightlife money. And I was able to. I made less, for sure. I'm getting closer to making that money. I think this year might be the year I make as much as I did in nightlife.
Congrats.
Thank you. Nice. But also, it made me realize I didn't need a lot of things either. When you realize you have to live, you don't know how long you have to live on what you have, you scale down a lot. And when you realize it's not so bad, it makes things a lot simpler.
I mean, that's what happened to me because I moved back home with what I consider being enough saving to be able to sustain my lifestyle, at least a much more humble lifestyle for a bit, but not knowing when and if I was going to still make money because I moved back home, not knowing what I was going to do just yet. COVID happened. And at the time, I was transitioning towards photography, which is what I'd become.
Did you know you wanted to do photography or you just had a camera and you were like, I feel like taking photos?
Well, yeah, I feel like taking photos because this, it was a hobby of mine for sure for the last 10 years or so. But I would say like anybody else, go to vacation, to trips, and you take pictures. I would do it as well in the street already because I eventually became more of a street photographer than a fashion photographer. So that's something I've
This man right here is a street photographer as well.
So you will understand.
Yeah.
That's some.
I mean, it's like peace of mind when you're out there, right? Just walking, taking pictures.
Being present.
And well, to your point, it's exactly what happened during COVID for me. I'd moved back probably 3 months before. I just literally moved to that new place early February. And in France, roughly, I remember the President Macron spoke March 12th. I was just celebrating my birthday. And he said, we're getting into lockdown on the 17th, which is something we talked about before. But for people that do not know, the rules in France were much stricter than they were here in the US. Not as bad as Italy, maybe Spain, but France was just after, where we could only step out of the house for about 1 hour per day within a 1 kilometer radius, which is about 3/4 of a mile, 2/3 of a mile for you guys. And I just moved to that place, and I told myself, well, this would be an occasion to get used to my place, which was in an amazing neighborhood initially, Montorgueil, which which is more of a village, a lot of bars, restaurants. Once it's shut down, it's just empty streets, not as fun anymore. Typical apartment from Montorgueil, low ceiling, not so large, not a balcony, a building right across so you don't get much light, which when the neighborhood is lively, it's great. But when it's not, you're kind of stuck. And I had just celebrated my birthday with a bunch of friends on the 12th of March. We did dinner, and then we went to what will, for all of us, be the last club party for about a year and a half. We celebrated in a club. What could have been, it probably was a cluster.
Where'd you go? Matignon?
No, back then it was Rouge Pigalle, which had that disco soulful house on Thursday
I've been to
for
Rouge is still open.
People after 30, which was like more of our vibe. But it was like probably 400 people like just stuck with one another, dancing the whole night and sweating. And I mean, this was already a big deal because all the clubs in Paris got shut down the day after.
Oh, wow.
But I consider going in the lockdown in my family house with my mom. But I was like, you know what? Last night was not your best move. You don't even know whether you have it or not. And I talked to my brother and sister and said, we do not know so much just yet. So you know what? Let's be safe for mom. I'm actually going to stay on my own in that apartment. And on a side note, a few of my best buddy and I had discussed the opportunity of renting a house in the countryside, just like if you were renting something upstate, telling ourselves, like, do you really want to stay for like 8 weeks in Paris, stuck in your apartment? We started looking at places. We were going to do it. Things fell apart. I'm stuck in my apartment. I'm in Paris. It's March 17. There's no way to move anymore. And I'm like, going back to your point, I'm going to have to step out of the house, at least besides just the 1 hour per day. You could also like work out. So if you were running, you were allowed to an extra hour.
Right.
You know, I run. I did not suddenly starting running, but I would step out of the house for this. I would step out of the house an extra hour. And for me, I would literally take that hour to walk in the street for photography purposes. But first, I think for the sake of memory, but also because to me, this was that outlet to keep me sane.
Yes.
And to this day, literally every single day in Paris or in New York, everywhere I go, I will at least walk around for 2 hours, phone in my hand, because also something I'm going to talk about. I do have a body camera and I shoot with it, but I still to this day shoot probably 80% of my pictures with my iPhone. And also because it gives you that flexibility and mobility. You don't get necessarily with the body camera. Needless to mention, when you shoot street photography, I shoot people.
Yeah,
I capture moments. So you much quicker. Needless to mention, you don't get noticed as much.
He's got a few of those experiences where he's gotten stuff thrown at him.
Yeah, I had one of the falafel cart guys throw food at me.
There you go.
People, they'll like, you just take a picture of me. They'll come up and try to punch you in the face. Yeah. I had a lady tell me to delete. I was shooting film one day. She's like, delete that. I was like, it's film. I can't. She's like, open it. I was like, hell no. I was like, this is a brand new roll of film. I can't do that. So yeah, you run into that every time, especially in New York.
Especially in New York. I guess people have no shame, like yelling at you for this.
Paris too, no?
Yeah, Paris. Yeah, they would. But I learned to be careful and cautious when shooting kids. Pretty often, I shoot half of the face or from the back. Because. I mean, for obvious reasons. Yeah. But yeah, you learn to be discreet, and you also learn to point at something when you're actually shooting at the person.
Yeah.
And it's much easier if you have somebody with you. But that being said, and that's going back to the body camera, what I find to be surprising though during COVID. So like I said, I would step out of the house about 1 hour per day, and 900 meters away from my home, there was the Pont des Arts. Which is right on the Seine River by Le Louvre. I would systematically go there for sunset. And
I love that.
I noticed that people would be more scared of me with my phone than people that would look like technically photo reporter with a very, very fancy camera. While I've noticed myself and I witnessed guy being a voyeur and literally shooting girls, they shouldn't be shooting with a large camera, but they wouldn't be suspected because they would look like, oh, he must be a photo reporter, he's a journalist sitting in the city. And with your phone, people are so scared of the viral aspect of taking picture now that they're scared of people taking picture with their phone, when honestly, I think every day,
I never thought about that. Yeah, that's interesting.
I thought I was safer with this, but it became kind of a paradox where people are more afraid of the phone.
This looks more like a personal pleasure regarding it makes sense.
Yeah, and some people might tell themselves, wow, because he shoot with the phone, he think I'm not gonna see him, but he probably actually like shooting some picture he shouldn't be taking. Yeah. Where the camera, it's so obvious that you cannot hide from it.
And you're not trying to hide it. That's the point, right?
No, you're not trying to hide it. But yeah, so I started shooting like every single day, and I started posting online, social media. And people from Paris, people from New York, from Dubai, French people abroad, they were stuck there, starting saying, well, it makes me feel so good to see my city like that. Or foreigners saying, like, it's so good to see Paris within that light and that perspective. And a few people kept starting saying, well, why don't you put a collection together and like do a show? And that's where the idea of my very first exhibit was born, which I know you attended. Yeah. And long story short, somebody offered me a space in Le Marais for just a day, just out of the third lockdown in Paris. We're still in Paris going through curfew at 6 p.m. You could not do whatever you wanted, but I took my chance to put a show together and exhibit about 50 pictures. I think there was between 1 p.m. and 5:30 p.m. because people had to be home at 6.
Yeah.
And that day I sold about 75 pictures, and I'm like, oh, wow, it's worth it. They were limited series of 30, and each print could sell several times, but it was a great call. And I told myself, well, if the show do well enough in Paris, I'll take it to New York, because this is my hometown kind of still to my, this is the way I see it. And I've that whole network of friends and clients and that I had for so many years. And I'm a green card holder, so I'm still technically an American resident. So I go back and forth for that one reason. And I did the show in New York, and in New York, it was for just a day and a half, and I sold more than 100 pictures. And then people in Miami and LA, like we have friends all over the country, kept saying, oh, I wish I could have been in New York. I'm like, you know what? No problem. I'm coming.
Yeah.
So from New York, I took the show to Miami, and from Miami, I took it to LA. And that little thing that just started out of me taking pictures of the lockdown in Paris eventually definitely kind of accelerated the process of me seeing myself as a photographer rather than just seeing myself as, it's just a thing, a hobby I'm doing. But, and this is why I mentioned the phone, and I still have it next to me.
Yeah.
I definitely suffer from the imposter syndrome.
I was just going to say that. Yeah.
Big time. Because of the phone, because I was new to it, because I was old. I mean, old as in when you come to a creative outlet after 40, what are people going to think about what you're doing and how you're doing it? And I remember vividly, there was a friend called Florent, he's been a photographer for 31 years, Florent Schmidt, who looked at me, and he can be pretty tough himself, because he was seeing me probably at first as just a new kid, but he told me, Fabien, stop it. There's no bad cameras, there's only bad photographers.
Yep.
If you're crushing it with your iPhone, you're a good one. That means you have an eye, and you're doing it with a camera, which is technically not as great as a 5D from Canon or all those fancy camera, which I'm not going to take anything away from a lot of photographers, but when you have a Ferrari or a Lamborghini of the cameras, it makes your work not pretty easy, but much easier probably.
Right.
And then comes the editing and whether you have an eye or not. But I think he definitely, the exhibit doing well in Paris and the cities in the US, me slowly but surely assuming myself as a photographer, and eventually a few photographers looking at me, I'm like telling me, stop feeling like an imposter because you're still shooting a lot with the iPhone. You have an eye, you're good at it, stick to it and call yourself a photographer. But it probably took me about a good 2 years.
How do you deal with that now when it's still popping? I'm assuming you still on occasion feel this way, or is it completely out?
No, sometimes, because I'm not much of what you call a geek. So I'm not the kind that gonna look in the booklet of the camera or go on YouTube and watch videos. I'm not. For me, it's just there's a lens. I see a frame. I see a scene. I shoot it. Now I kind of work on the lighting. That's something that I was the son of an architect, so I think it definitely played a part. People always tell me, I love the way you frame. I've always looked at the perspective, les lignes de fuite. That's something that I really care about. I shoot mostly and only in color. I don't shoot in black and white. But yeah, from time to time, also because I'm telling myself, should a brand reach out to me and said, well, we want to do that awesome campaign photo studio. I'm like, what am I going to do if I find myself like looking at this? You remember when I walked in, to me, it's just still like I'm a stranger to all of this.
Right. But is this something that you'd feel you'd have to do, or?
No, but
or do you want to do?
The one thing I keep saying to people, and I stick to my gun, is I'm doing it out of passion first. It really is a creative process to me, and I want to keep it that way. I don't want to be like many people do, and I respect them because this is their full-time job. But when this is your job, you wake up in the morning thinking, I may have to shoot a wedding, I may have to shoot a party, I may have to shoot something I don't want to be shooting, a product shot in restaurants. I don't.
We've already experienced it. You were passionate about bringing people together, being in nightlife. I loved nightlife. When I first started, I loved it. I'd go out on nights I didn't work. I was out all the time. But when it became a job,
that's when the passion was lost and the love of it was lost. So having learned your lesson that way, don't do it. I say keep on doing your passion.
No, of course. And this is, I think, the beauty of coming to a creative outlet at a later age, as in, like, let's say for me it was roughly 40. I don't feel like I have to, regardless. Like, I really want to stick to the fact that keeping it a passion, and this is my passion, I'm sticking to it. And that doesn't stop me from, let's say, my cousin, I shot his wedding. That was my wedding gift. I'll do it. But if you call me and say, do you shoot weddings? Absolutely not.
No,
I shot a party. I shot friends of restaurants like you, like in New York, and I would eventually shoot their restaurants and even the food. I don't care. I'll do it because we're friends. I'm making it as a favor, and I might even get paid for it, obviously, and fully. But I don't want to advertise myself as somebody that does product shot, wedding pictures, party pictures. And I could. I mean, we knew what was his name. You remember Craig? Craig. Ike Love Jones. That was his brand
Ike
name.
Love Jones. Okay.
Well, anyway, saying that with all the nightlife people we know, should I want to shoot parties, I probably could like come back to New York and shoot so much and make a lot of money.
I can't see you doing that. I don't want to see you doing that.
This is not what I'm doing. I mean, you've seen the picture I shoot.
Of course.
And I encourage people to go and check it out on my Instagram because it's not like I have a website.
Right.
But I use my Instagram for that one purpose, that I shoot people, I care about people, and you've seen the live show, what I'm saying. I love to capture moments. I love to shoot that unsolicited instant, like capturing people at their like true nature. And the reason why, going back to the device I'm using, is interesting. When we're talking about the body camera, I do a lot of photo exhibit, like many people, specifically when it comes to photographer, whether it's Viviane Mayer, like Erwit Elliott, Cartier-Bresson. These, they had the luck that when you were shooting 40, 50, 60 years ago, people thought it was so awesome to have your picture taken. And when you go to the exhibit of Viviane Mayer, it's so obvious because she was shooting mostly like low-class people. For them to be able to have their picture or portrait taken was such a luxury. Yeah. They want to be a part of it. Now, what we were saying earlier, go to somebody in the street. Say, I would love to shoot. I'm a photographer. A lot of people say, no, don't bother me. I'm not going to curse, but you know what I'm saying. Like,
I saw the Viviane Mayer exhibition in Paris.
Yeah, with those blue, beautiful like scenery. And
beautiful.
Yeah, or you even watch what Steve McCurry was doing, photo reporting all over the world.
Yeah.
And he shot those portraits. I mean, I wish I could. Sometimes I see people in the streets. I want to stop them. Like, I genuinely think those people have such a beautiful face, whether it's the wrinkles of the face, the hair, and I want to, but it's kind of, I don't even know how to approach them.
Right.
Maybe once you become much of a public figure, it might be easier to say, well, this is my name, you can look me up, and probably they would. But when you're just getting started, it's kind of harsh, and they might think, what is he going to do with my pictures?
I think that's also part of the imposter syndrome you may need to wash away. You know, if you have, just do it.
It's also, you know what, if I'll see somebody wearing like a cool looking hat and the light's coming in, I might go up and say, listen, I need to get a shot of you. Can I?
Yeah.
And I'll show them some work. Like, listen, I mean, most of the time you word it, they're gonna say no. They're gonna say no. You don't want to hear no. That's the problem. So that's why you don't do it.
You try.
Exactly. Exactly. The answer is always no unless you ask the question.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah. I mean, I think that goes across anything in life.
Yeah. Exactly.
But people would assume, because as far as I'm concerned, you probably, because I work nightlife and I was a promoter, I'm outgoing, but I'm a pretty shy and reserved person in life.
I want to tell you a little story personally.
Okay, go.
This is a recent, I have a therapist, and my therapist gave me an assignment last week. And I don't know if I told you this, but my assignment, because, how do I say this? I'm also a little bit shy. I can talk to anybody, but I'm single. I would love to meet somebody. Mm-hmm. If I see somebody in the street, a beautiful girl, I don't know what to say. So my assignment to her, my assignment from my therapist is, before I see her in 2 weeks, I have to speak to 3 random women that I find attractive in the street and just go up to them and say something. I'm definitely afraid in a way. Not definitely, like I know I can do it, right? I can turn it on and be like, and just say something. The rejection is a little bit of a fear, but like, one of the reasons I don't do it is because I have a fear of
of having unwanted passes. I've seen so many guys in nightlife hitting on women, and they obviously don't want to be spoken to. My self-awareness is so high, maybe to a fault.
Same. You know? I mean, I remember it too well. And seeing those girlfriends of ours being bothered by people. And needless to mention, in the Me Too movement we're in now, you even more careful before you speak to somebody, specifically, obviously, girl, whatever the age, but you're being very cautious.
Yeah.
And when you're in a situation like we are, where you reserve and shy, it probably make it harder, even though I believe, judging from my perspective with you, knowing the type of person you are, we don't come across as the obnoxious person when we speak to these people.
Right.
And there's a reason why the people were with us when we were doing nightlife is because I think they appreciated our personality, the fact that we're very careful. And that's something I heard from 99% of the girls that were going out with me saying, I want to hang out with you because I know you're looking after us. You're making sure we're safe, we're fine. Unlike other promoters, which I will not name, which were just using them as commodities and a piece of meat.
Yeah. And for them, for their personal, for sex, essentially.
As well.
And I always had rules of don't do that.
Like the good drug dealer. Do not consume.
In a sense, yes. I mean, with the exception, unless if I had a real connection and they made it obvious it was okay, that's a different story. But no, I feel you. I mean, I still have that rule with outsiders. You know?
Good rule, by the way.
Yeah.
But I would say I do believe we come across as nice guy. We don't come across as the obnoxious douchebag, which is going to be bothering you, even though at first, that first or two line, you never know what to expect from that girl. So I feel for you. I felt for you.
Yeah.
How many times I find myself in the street, I see that gorgeous woman or that girl that like transpires something that really drew me to her. And I'm too shy to go and talk to her. What I've done recently, though, I don't know if that could help you, is before I moved out of New York, I remember dating back to 2015, 2016. I think that comes more out of education, but I started literally greeting all my neighbors, any neighbors whatsoever, but also homeless, old ladies. And you know what, people can get scared in New York? Like they're on their own in the streets, you talk to them, they're almost afraid.
Yeah.
But I'm saying by doing it more and more, you probably get a little more at ease with doing it.
Yeah.
More comfortable.
Yeah.
I don't know if that could help you with the girls as
well.
But I've seen myself saying it out loud now in Paris or New York. If I see a girl, I might not necessarily approach her, but as I'm crossing her, I'm like, you are absolutely beautiful. And I have no shame saying it because I think if it's right, say it. And not even a beautiful girl, but I've seen myself in Harlem in the park. That was about a month ago. That gentleman, I run into him 3 times, dressed the part.
Right.
He comes from another period of time.
Right,
it's amazing. 3-piece suits. He has the little thing, collar socks, like shiny shoes.
Right.
The hat on a Sunday. And I'm like, I stopped him like, sir, I really have to tell you, you look so sharp, so nice. And he said, "Whoa, thank you very much." And I felt that if you come from a good place.
I agree. And I have to remind myself of everything you just said.
Yeah. And I feel I know it's easier to say to
for
a
sure.
man or an old person or a group of people rather than a girl because you're personally involved.
Right.
That girl, you're just afraid she's not going to like you. But it definitely at least helped me or made me feel a little bit more comfortable in speaking out loud in the street, at least. And because I'm going to make it a more general thing. We have a lot of issues of people definitely in depression right now.
Yeah.
And you have absolutely no clue what a word in somebody in depression can help.
Well, what?
Like the fact that you speak to somebody that might be struggling, how much this can help. I
mean, I think sometimes the most impactful interactions are the unexpected ones, right? So I remember I went through it was like 6-7 years ago. I was going through this breakup, which was like, I was down. And this one guy that I would have never expected to say anything to me in a positive light, he goes, like, why you shouldn't feel bad. You made the right choice. You are way better than something along those lines. And I never expected to hear from somebody like that saying that. So to your point, I think it's great to provide that unexpected compliment to somebody, because you never know what they're going through.
Yeah, and who knows if that girl that which you like so much is actually never being bothered and would be flattered to hear from somebody else.
Yeah.
Specifically, somebody that looks like a good guy come to her.
Yeah.
It's just like the way you come across. I feel if you're not threatening,
right,
there's no reason why she's going to take it poorly.
Exactly.
I mean, doesn't make it easier, but I think that you have nothing to risk
for sure
doing it. So you have to do it 3 times, right?
3 times before I see her. Yeah, I've done it once.
Good.
Did it once. So.
And how did it work?
It was actually on a date that I wasn't sure was a date or not. I mean, it was a date, but I was telling her about my story of 3 girls that approached. She was like, "Yeah, to shoot your shot." So I was like, "All right, I'm shooting my shot. What's up?"
So, well, by the way, that's actually a good line. Yeah. That's a good pickup line, saying, "Well, my therapist told me that I told my therapist I was going to say." No, but it's especially in this country, which I love so much. It's almost you're a weirdo if you don't have a therapist. If you don't see somebody, like in France, it's still like in Latin countries, it's still if you see a therapist, you're local, you're weirdo.
I don't know.
You have issues. Yeah. Here, I think people see it as a positive thing.
Oh, for sure. I mean, maybe healthier individuals see it as a positive thing, but yeah.
So, I mean, you can sit and the girl not going to look at you as like, oh, he must have issues because he see a therapist. You know what I'm saying?
I think maybe on the coast, it's probably a little bit more
but I'm not trying to pick up girls in Mississippi.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay, cool. So you're a photographer. You have to say it proudly, you're a photographer.
I have to say it.
Do you have a plan moving forward, or is it just to see
well, that's what I'm trying to figure now is where I want to take that passion of mine and how could I develop into something even more tangible that could also provide a bit of a more stable income.
Right.
Being a street photographer, shooting a lot of people, like, the last show was called Citizen of the World. I mostly and only care about shooting people. I can appreciate the nature morte, like a still, like beautiful sunset like anything else, but I'm not going to hike for 7 hours with a stand and 5 cameras just to shoot the perfect sunset. At least not for now.
But also, I think you have a love for people and the human story. You're a storyteller. We introduced you, so it makes sense to shoot people.
The question is, when you do shoot people and you shoot street, how do you generate actually money out of it, at the exception of making exhibits? I've done exhibits. Thankfully, so far, they've been extremely successful. But it's not like I could do 2 or 3 of them a year and it would provide such an extensive
I think you can diversify. Well,
I noticed that. All right, so there's a street photographer in London, Craig Whitehead. He goes by 6th Street Under. He does a lot of.
I follow him. So love what he does.
Dude, amazing! I literally got his last book. He put out a book of all the stuff when he was in New York. He was in New York for like 2 weeks, and he literally put out a small book of just everything he did in New York. Yeah,
these are the paths that I've been trying to explore. Yeah. There's the book option, also the trying to partner. I don't know if it's a brand or a partner with maybe a TV network. The same way Anthony Bourdain used to do documentary. How can you eventually, the way I usually shoot a city when I go to a brand new city, a lot of people have told me, and I think that's a good example, that I've seen so many pictures of my city, but seeing through your lens make me rediscover my city, as if you could have gone to the same places 25 times. My take on this, the 26 could work even better. As in, Bourdain probably shows like that had been done before. Yeah. But he had his own way, his own twist.
Of course.
And it was part of his personality as well.
Largely,
obviously. And I think even though like traveling shows and discovering cities been done, I don't know if I could eventually partner with the TV network or a brand. I could say, we would love for you to go to this and that place and shoot it. And you have carte blanche. Yeah. Do you think we trust you? We love the way you shoot lifestyle and you shoot people. And this is exactly what we want to put, whether it's a booklet for, I don't know, tourism, a booklet for
tourism board would be a nice one as well. I mean,
or doing, like I said, with a TV network and you have a show, which is, I don't know, once a month, and which would obviously bring together all that I love so much. Yeah. Photography, traveling. I obviously love to travel. Getting to know new people and discovering new culture. So that's an option. So the book is one.
I think with the video series, like for like a TV network, I mean, you probably have to start like everybody else and do like a couple of YouTube things, like create something that you would actually be able to put on like a YouTube or stuff for like Instagram, like the shorts and stuff like that.
Yeah, which, I mean, I'm sure you're aware of it. Something that I've been finding extremely frustrating for photographers that shoot still pictures. As you know so well, the social media now, because of TikTok, in the TikTok world, all they care about is the video content. Mm-hmm. I had literally 2 friends of mine. One is an ambassador for Nikon in Italy, big time, like he's a big one. He was posting the other day stories saying, Instagram literally called me, this is the 3rd time, to ask me if I could create more video content because this is what really works and this is what they want to put in the algorithm. So if you find yourself like videographer like us who do still pictures, you literally, for you to get within those algorithms, to get some virality and to get some traction, you have to do a reel of your still picture. Otherwise, you get out of the algorithm.
Yeah.
And I've noticed it, like in the last 2 years, the way it changed and the way the traction and the amount of people that see my stories and see my posts. While I do have more followers, I have really loyal and faithful followers, but because I only do still, I get out of the algorithm. So
I think things go in waves. So stick to what your passion is. Don't listen to the noise. Don't be forced to do something else. I mean, do what you need to do, but don't, because I'll use a nightlife example. I remember when house music, EDM, not house, it was EDM. Mm-hmm. It was a big difference.
True.
House is good, EDM. So it became the mainstream. And all these DJs that were doing hip hop parties were now house DJs. Want to be house DJs. Yeah. And a couple of people, specifically DJ Soul, was like, "No, I'm sticking to my passion." And these hip hop guys that stuck with hip hop, obviously, it came back, and they came back very strong. And thankfully for them, they stuck to their passion. So don't let trends divert you.
Versus the one that turned themselves towards EDM and got lost in the process.
Exactly. So stick to your passion. Don't get diverted. Don't look at other people for your plan. Keep not necessarily blinders on, but stay your eyes on your vision.
Yeah, well, I know that I'm a pretty stubborn person in the first place, but I'm trying more and more to at least be open to the possibility of exploring. Should I actually try to create once or twice a month a reel out of a few of my stories?
I haven't seen anybody do this yet, and it literally just came to me. If you do a reel with a still picture, but you use a voiceover, and you explain in the picture what you've done, like, all right, so I was here, and this is what was going on. Like, not that many people do that. And you sound like you have a really good speaking voice, so I know people will listen to you.
Okay,
while you do it.
That's a good idea.
Thank you.
There you go.
Like that.
Actually, the podcast is a brainstorming session. For you.
It is. It is brainstorming and a bit of therapy too. I mean, podcast.
I can give you the tips on the voiceovers. They've been working really well for us on the Outsiders stuff. So you'll get the hang on of it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm trying to be open to other options to. I don't want to fall into the train of it, but at least be open to the possibility of helping my brain grow a little bit better, because the way the social media are shaped now or organized doesn't necessarily fit the bill for what I do. Mm-hmm. And this is incredibly frustrating. So I feel like there's a lot of photographers out there that must be so frustrated like I am, because you want to have your work out there, and at the end of the day, if you're not one of the 10 that everyone's follow, you're pretty much in the matrix somewhere.
Yeah.
Nobody really...
It's okay. Get your website. You do some ads for yourself if you want.
But I will eventually do a website because I do sell, and I think it's great to sell some prints. But sadly, I mean, to these days, your Instagram page still remains the best for your brand. Like, who really look at website anymore? I would see more the website as an online shop, and
that's what I mean.
Right, that's what you mean. Okay, but otherwise, we are stuck with Instagram now. You don't have a choice anymore.
Unless you want to start telling stories about each image.
I could.
You can do that. You can do that on Instagram, but you can also do like
it's a cross-platform. You can branch it over into YouTube.
Well, kind of like what we do with the podcast. We put like the catchy moments in the tagline of what it is. But if you want to see the whole thing or read the whole explanation, go to the website.
I mean, and that's what a storyteller should do. But you know the contents that I usually post. I do not only post a picture. The same with the story. I'm going to add up some music. The caption matters. I put some text. I put some effort into explaining why and what I did. What I find interesting though from doing now 7 exhibits is even though you had, there was a reason or whatever you shot at every exhibit, sometimes the people that come to the exhibit and look at the picture give me another outlook or look on my own picture. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's actually interesting.
Yeah.
Or something I may have not noticed.
Right.
And trust me, I'm super particular on details, but sometimes I may have missed something.
Yeah, of course.
And that, which is why I could tell the story, but having people telling me their own take on it.
That's another angle. There you go.
Yeah. But in a way, so I leave it open in not saying this is the one side to the story. There's many sides to the story.
Right.
Yeah. And actually people looking at your pictures can give you another side to the story, which I find very interesting. And I was surprised in many of my exhibits. I'm like, oh, wow, that's actually cool. I might use it now. I might say it. When people ask me about that picture, I might say it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good approach. It's more to storytelling.
Yeah, there's a lot to it.
All right. So we're going to ask you some more normal questions now.
Okay.
What do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun?
Mm-hmm.
What do I for fun? Honestly, as cliche as it sounds, getting with my friend, my close friend, which was definitely part of the reasoning of me going back home.
Mm-hmm.
Being very French, it's a lot of great meal, great food, great wine.
Yeah.
Doesn't involve partying anymore. It involved me traveling. This is fun to me when I travel, when I go to new places. Walking around, might not be fun to people. It's fun to me, actually.
Same.
I step out of my house all the time, and I love walking around and walking the streets and witnessing scene. And yeah, I mean, music is a huge part of my life.
Yeah.
So that's part of the. Would you call that fun? Yes, it is. It's
absolutely.
Fun. Yeah.
Same. I think we have similar interests. We probably mentioned this already, but what are your personal goals and dreams and professional goals and dreams?
If I was honestly able now to mostly, not necessarily only, but mostly leave out of my passion. It's cliché, we say in French, heureux qui de sa passion en a fait son métier.
Mm-hmm.
It's really like when you're able to earn a good income out of your passion. It's amazing. And I definitely would love to be able to do that without compromising to do what we said, which is shooting weddings and parties. And so, yeah, I'd love to be able to do so. And if that could still involve a lot of traveling, that'd be amazing. Personal ambition or dreams, definitely being able to start a family sometime soon, just like you. Still single, still looking for the one.
Ladies, if you're interested, Fabien Desgroux, you can find him on social.
Looking for a partner.
Yes.
That's definitely what I'm looking for. And I was lucky enough myself to grow in a family. My parents were still together. I have 2 brothers and sisters. With 3, I was the baby. I'm still super, super close to my brother and sister. I have 5 nephews and nieces just like you. I know how close we are from our family and the relatives. So I definitely want the same for myself, and which was part of the reasoning of me also spending some more time back home and getting closer to my culture and the roots and
Makes sense. Okay. What advice would you give high school you?
Wow, that's a good one, especially from working that podcast with my friend. That's something I heard pretty often.
Yeah.
I wouldn't change anything just because I think you need to do mistakes and make mistakes to be able to learn. I probably wish the high school me I had confidence, but probably not as much, which you gain with experience. But just like you, I'm still very shy and reserved, but I definitely gain in confidence and experience it, and that definitely helped me being able to create more opportunities for myself. But no, I wouldn't change much. I mean, actually, looking back, those 15 years I spent in New York, you probably some stuff that you wish went in a different direction, but life wouldn't be the same otherwise. And honestly, I'm very happy the way it unfolded, and I wouldn't change anything, if any. Just like I said, as far as the vacation time, spending more time with the one you love.
Yeah.
And we all get stuck in the matrix in New York, and I was one of them. And I'm a family person, so I still went home 3 or 4 times a year, which for a working New Yorker is a lot.
Yeah.
I was crossing the Atlantic at least 4 times a year, but still wasn't enough. And I think we we've all been there. You eventually lose someone and you understand that you should have probably spent more time with them. So
yeah,
on the personal level, high school me would say, do not forget to spend quality time with the one you loved. Especially when you're in high school, you're a bit of a dickhead, and there's so much that you want to do, and you don't want to speak to your parents. I was not one of them. I was like pretty close to them, but still, it's definitely you want to take over the world. Me going to New York was definitely part of that process. I want to take over the world. I want to be on my own. I want to prove myself something.
Of course.
Prove to your parents, prove to a few people, mostly prove myself something. But in the process, you might forget the people that you care so much about and care about you. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so spend some quality time with the one you love.
Agree. That's a great one. What's your favorite part of Outsiders?
Ooh. Because I've been watching it from far since the beginning, and I've seen you grow, and I think it's such an amazing concept. I love traveling, but I mean, obviously love nature just in general. And a lot of my travels are not in fancy hotel. It's usually like I went to Iceland, or I go to the Alps all the time. I go to the ocean. I love this so much, and we lost track of what really matters in life. And I'm not going to start a debate on the climate change and all of this, but if Outsiders is just not so in line with whatever people should have on a personal level, as far as like personal ambition and ambition as a community, we should spend more time out. We should spend more time caring about nature. We should spend more time with other people.
Yeah.
And I love the way Outsiders is actually bringing people that are not necessarily from the same background, and do not necessarily know each other. And from watching some of your videos and some of the stuff, it's pretty cool to see from when they leave at 11 or 10 a.m. and by the time everyone comes back, you recreate a community, which we did in nightlife, which we had a thing for it, but it's nice to be able to do it on another platform or in another playground environment.
Agreed. And it's for me, that's what I enjoyed about the nightlife aspect, and being able to do that in a more sustainable environment that brings more to people, that's not just consumption based, alcohol, food, whatever, is fulfilling and creating great memories. And these people, I see people making their best friends and hanging out outside of Outsiders all the time. So it's fulfilling.
Yeah, and you might, because some people might be dragged by their friend and not so much of nature people. And I can easily imagine that the people that go to Outsiders event eventually want to come back. And so you definitely played a part in helping them finding their passion and groove for nature and outside. So outdoors, sorry.
No problem. Next question is one of my favorite questions. What is your most embarrassing moment?
That's rough. That's tough. I wish I'd listened to more podcasts so I would have prepared this one. Well, I'm sorry. Give me a second. I have to think.
Of course.
They definitely, I mean, God, there was some probably in school, college. There was some in New York. Let me think about New York.
Any unexpected moments, any embarrassing drunken nights, anything where you were exposed for some reason, whether it be physically or just exposed in general?
Wow, it doesn't come to my mind. I'm so sorry. I wish I had an answer for you right now.
It could be childhood as well.
Childhood? Yeah. I mean, that childhood, absolutely. I wasn't like I was definitely not a bullied kid, and I was not definitely bullying. I was actually more the kid to protect, especially because my closest cousin was a bit of a geek with glasses. So I've always pictured geeks, top of the class, as the one I had to defend.
Yeah.
Because I was, projecting my cousin. But playing tennis in competition, I got bullied by a kid that was within the same... there were different leagues depending on the region. Ligue de Paris, Ligue whatever the region you were, Côte d'Azur and everything. And each and every age group were three of us and one of the kid, which nice. We became friends eventually, but he gave me a rough time because my game back then was probably not as offensive on attack. How do you say?
Really offensive, yeah.
Offensive,
it was,
right? More on the defensive part, the same way in soccer, rather than being a striker, you'd be more
aggressive,
of a defender,
I guess,
not aggressive enough. And I remember him making fun of my game, and that definitely, I didn't enjoy it at all.
Right.
That's something that I didn't feel so great about. And that was some bullying of some sort, which was quite surprising because it was not the kid that was getting bullied in school. But it did. That was his way to exist. Looking back, I mean, I'm not mad at him. It probably helped me getting even stronger, if you ask me.
But that was an embarrassing moment for you.
Yeah, it was.
Exposed as a weakness, I guess,
Yeah, when people point out of what you do poorly or what you do not good enough, specifically when you're 11, 12, 13 years old and you're trying to find your place.
Yeah.
That would be, as far as I can remember, that would be one of those. But damn, in New York, I wish I could tell you something. There's probably something, man.
If you think of it before we end the podcast, mention it. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you want to share about yourself?
I mean, I shared some of, I would say, my knowledge as far as you guys should really look after the one that you care about so much.
Yeah.
I'm glad, as far as I'm concerned, that I haven't shared. I think I shared the fact that I'm actually a pretty reserved and shy person. That's a lot of people in nightlife might be surprised, like hearing this now, because they saw me as somebody pretty confident, outgoing, when I was not necessarily. And it's just funny how you're able to use a work opportunity as a way to be out there, which was the case for me, which probably was the case for you too, because people looking at us would have probably think, wow, look at these two guys. They know exactly, they know their shit. They know what they're doing. They're super confident. Even people thought that sometimes I was cocky, which I promise I was not. It was more you have that shell you try to create, specifically nightlife. You know too well that people want to use you pretty often, so you start being cautious when people speak to you. But I've been told that sometimes I was probably cold at first, and it's just me trying to protect myself, and also because I'm naturally shy and reserved. I'm not that overly...
but I find that the people who are overly outgoing are always viewed as, I read a book about it, like if you find a middle ground where you're extroverted when you need to be, but introverted as well, people seem to have more trust in you. Whereas if you're always extroverted, there's something up. So it's not a bad quality to have.
I was definitely somewhat introverted as well. Just, I think it was a good balance.
Yeah.
Just like you, which is why it worked out well.
I agree. I mean, there's areas in our lives where we want to improve that, but
of course.
All right. So the last segment here is 5 rapid fire questions.
Okay.
So you know how that works. Whatever first comes to your mind.
Okay.
Shoot. So the first question is, other than New York City and Paris, what's your favorite city?
Do it again, because I'm going to do it. It's going to come far.
Other than New York City?
No, because you say New York and Paris.
Other than New York and Paris. Because I know those two are your favorites.
They are, indeed. I traveled... Okay, go ahead. Do it again. I'm sorry.
Other than New York City and Paris, what's your favorite city?
Napoli.
Napoli, okay.
Yeah, Italy.
Why not? Why?
It's just love the vibe. It's, I would say in France, pittoresque. It's like they're super poor, but yet super happy the way they are. For photography purposes, absolutely amazing. You could spend a lifetime over there.
Yeah.
There are actually some amazing photographers that just keep shooting their city and their people.
Yep.
And that's something which I could be frustrated about, is not speaking Italian, because I wish sometime I could approach a bunch of people. But Napoli, to anybody never had a chance to go, if you do not necessarily go to vacation to look for the fanciness and you're willing to immerse yourself within the culture,
that's how
Napoli
I vacation.
Is Italy. It's like in all sense of the way, and even historically speaking, it's one of the biggest city of Italy. The Kingdom of Napoli, which became eventually the Kingdom of Puglia, and it's part of Sicily, belonged to the Italians, belonged to the Spanish, belonged to the French. Napoli, there's so much, and I absolutely love this city. I've been the last 5 summers because I have friends there. Yeah.
Oof, I might join you next summer then.
Yep.
If you could do any other profession in the world, what would you do?
I would have, as a teenager, I would have told you to be a soccer player. It was one of them. Playing being a piano player, I used to play the drums, but I think I would have loved to be a musician, having either a great voice or playing the piano like tremendously well and being able to perform. That's something I would have loved, even though I'm not so keen about being in front of the camera. Mastering an instrument and or my voice would have something I would have loved to do, I think. Yeah.
That's interesting. But you're creative, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
What's your vice?
My vice? Ooh. Food.
Yeah.
Food, booze, but like not any booze. Like, especially back home, like great, amazing wine. Des bons vins français.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's some amazing wine around the world, but yeah, food and wine, and it can be a vice. I would say, sounds my friends. Honestly, I care so much about the friendship that I built. That's the one thing that count the most, because to me that goes together. And when I explain to people why I moved back home, was also the part of the process of moving back to that place where we have that savoir vivre. We take our time to leave. When we eat. We don't feed ourselves like American. Yeah. We take 2 hours.
At least.
And even though I can eat alone, for me, eating is something that you share, and you share with your friend, and that comes with good food and good wine. It's not something that you do in 15 minutes.
Yeah, there's a saying, never eat dinner alone, which is not always easy to do because, people are busy, but having dinner with people is so important.
Yeah, if you can. But even like going back to food, like I said, when I prepare something for myself at home, I do it as if I was like giving a plate to a restaurant, like to somebody at the restaurant. Yeah. It's like you eat with your eyes too, and I think you have to, so food definitely one of those vices, absolutely big time.
What's your greatest fear?
Right now, I don't know if it's a fear, but I would say I'm 42. I'll be, 43 in a few months, and not being able to have a family and kids. That's something, I definitely want to have a family. I want to have kids. And I remember when my dad passed, that's the one thing I told him right before he passed, is that I'm so sad you won't get to see my kids, and my kids won't get to see you, because I know how great my parents were as parents and grandparents. Yeah. And I absolutely want that for my kids. And I want to I want to enjoy my kids. Yeah. Potentially my grandkids. And by being a dad, potentially at, let's say, 45, even though we're both very healthy and we don't look our age, there's a reality. So, I want to be able to play ball with my kid. And so that could be a fear, not being able to have kids like soon enough. Yeah. Or finding a person to be with. I'm not really afraid of it, but finding the right partner to have kid with and start like a family, which I can be very proud of. Yeah, that could be a fear.
Yeah, I see that. That's the hard part, is finding the person you want to do that with.
No shit.
Yeah, it might be one of my fears too. All right, what's your favorite food, and what did you bring today?
So, I brought you some, fun fact, the Dunkers, some Trader Joe. I'm not supposed to say probably Trader Joe, I don't know.
Sure you can. You can say whatever you want.
I'm addicted to those. So you know what? People might not know, but yeah, you told me very, it was...
my mom always has this in the house. Always.
These are pure insanity.
Wait, when's your birthday?
March 9th.
I'm March 14th.
You are.
And I love those fucking things. I always got a fucking thing.
These are Pisces who have a lot in common, huh? Pisces, the Dunkers, the photography. We love to leave. These, it's a little tip, keep them in the fridge.
Yes, so they don't melt.
Kind of cold chocolate.
Yeah.
They just, once you start, careful.
I can't actually eat those because I'm since August I haven't done gluten, dairy, or sugar or fun.
We'll do it for you, but the problem is like you pick one, you think, okay, it's just one. The size looks.
Oh no, I remember eating these, and half of the box is gone.
Exactly. Once you start, and I've had people that like told me, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, they start and like next things you know, 5 or 6 in your mouth already. Yeah. And you're gonna finish it pretty quickly. And it's like chocolate is a little bit of coconut, I think. Yeah. What's your? I have one? Can I have one?
Yeah, for sure.
This is actually my first food of the day.
What's your choice of dunking beverage?
Growing up as a kid, always milk.
Yeah.
But this, just like that.
Really?
These are called dunkers, but I don't dunk them in anything.
You dunk them in your mouth.
No, just in my mouth.
Yeah.
But
amazing.
they need to be coming out of the fridge because they remain like, kind of chill.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the chocolate can be pretty
melty. Yeah. I know that.
But yeah, you made me think it's funny because I literally bought the box, and whenever I go back home, or I always gonna go to the shop before and get a box for myself. I love those, and I got so many people addicted.
Yeah, I know all about these. They're a problem.
They are.
Yeah, there might be cocaine in those. I think they're addictive.
They are, and I don't have an addictive personality.
Yeah,
no matter how much I talk about the vice of food, like when it comes to booze, going back to nightlife, there's so many times where I stopped drinking.
Yeah.
For like 2-3 months, and I could, which is why also I think I didn't fall into the drug trap because I didn't have much of that addictive personality. I think as well my parents were putting me into sports. I think when you grow up as like an athlete and you do sports and competition, you kind of stay away from it.
I think in some sense I might be over-disciplined. Like I really don't allow myself to indulge in anything that's really bad for me.
But we did though. Before, at least.
With nightlife?
Yeah. A little bit at
first. In a way.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I never was a big drinker. I never really got drunk. People would come to my birthday party with the only purpose of seeing me drunk that one time a year.
So, I could drink. I can still drink. I had eye tolerance, but thankfully, no bipolarity when I drink and consume booze or any other thing, as a matter of fact, which something we witness a lot in nightlife, you and I, is the people that once they drink become a totally different person and you have to handle it.
Yeah.
The fact is, and I know some people going to hear it and going to confirm what I'm saying, people that have been going out with me for 10, 15 years will look at me like, but you don't drink, Fabien, right? I'm like, wait, hold on, what? People would think to this day that I still don't drink when I could drink a bottle of Jack Daniel every night.
Really?
And go play soccer at 7 back then.
Yeah.
But eventually, thankfully, I don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
But I would because I care myself.
Right.
And I was not changing and I was still looking after people.
Right.
And probably because these people, when they drink, they lose their shit.
And then
I do not.
And then you also see them during the day sometimes and they look terrible. A lot of them don't take care of themselves, specifically the people that work in the business. Yeah.
But yeah, that's something I made. That's
true.
Thankfully, I don't spend as much time in New York anymore, so I stay away from it. But I'm back home.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for that. And being back home, it's me being back to boulangerie and bakeries.
Yeah.
So it's almost like bread and croissant and pain au chocolat.
You can't find that anywhere here to the quality you find in Paris.
To that quality, no. Which is why back then I'd started Crêpe Sucre.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't find a good crepe in New York. No disrespect to the brand that opened in New York years ago. I'm sorry, you guys suck.
But yeah, they're terrible.
They're like
real
deal.
Crispy. They're like they think is good. Anyway, what really stood out about Crêpe Sucre to me wasn't just the crêpe, but it was the confiture you made, the jams.
We're doing everything
the authentic,
fresh,
great way as well.
Yeah.
And the correct fillings, not the stupid fillings that you see people put whipped cream in.
But sadly, I still had to buy Nutella because in this country, people wanted some, and they were still, I think, they're still representing about 60-65% of the sales.
Yeah.
But otherwise, we're making all the sugars and the marmalade and the salted caramel and
the marmalade, the lemon, and
depending on the season and the fruits.
That's what I appreciate the most: the authentic fillings.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
Now I'm back home and I'm back to croissant bread.
Yes, you are. Well, I think that pretty much wraps up the interview for now. I'd love to have you back. We'd love to see you on your journey as a photographer and as a storyteller, obviously. Yeah. So whenever you're in town, give us a shout.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, brother. That's awesome.